My boss stood in front of the entire department and called me a thief. He said I'd stolen $12,000 in inventory. He said he had proof. What he didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything for 6 months, and so had the security cameras.
I worked as an inventory coordinator at a regional distribution center for a medical supply company. My job was simple but critical. Track incoming shipments, log everything into the system, and make sure what we received matched what was ordered. I'd been there for 7 years. 7 years of perfect performance reviews. 7 years of catching discrepancies that saved the company money. 7 years of being the person everyone trusted. Then Marcus Holloway transferred in as our new warehouse manager. Marcus came from a smaller facility that had closed due to budget cuts. From day one, he made it clear he thought our operation was sloppy. He criticized our processes, questioned our numbers, and micromanaged every single thing we did. But what really stood out was how he treated me specifically. I was the only woman in a leadership position in the warehouse. The other coordinators were all men, and Marcus never questioned their work. But mine, he checked it constantly. He'd pull my reports and go through them line by line, looking for errors. When he couldn't find any, he seemed almost disappointed. About 3 months into his tenure, inventory started going missing. Small things at first. A case of surgical gloves here, some bandages there. Nothing huge, but enough to notice. Marcus immediately started an investigation, and he made it clear he suspected someone on the inside. I wasn't worried. I had nothing to hide. My records were immaculate. Every single item I processed was documented with timestamps, photographs, and digital signatures. I'd implemented that system myself years ago, specifically because I knew how important accountability was in this industry. But then the missing items got bigger, more expensive. A shipment of portable monitors worth $8,000 vanished. Then specialized surgical equipment worth another $4,000. The total losses climbed to $12,000 over the course of 2 months. Marcus called a meeting with HR and the regional director. I wasn't invited, but my coworker Danny told me afterward what happened. Marcus had presented a theory. Someone with system access was logging items as received, then removing them before they reached the warehouse floor. And he had a suspect. Me. His evidence? I was the only coordinator who worked alone on the early shift. I had full system access, and according to him, the missing items all corresponded to shipments I personally processed. I found out I was under investigation when HR called me into a conference room the following Monday. Sandra Chen, our HR representative, sat across from me with a manila folder thick with papers. She looked uncomfortable. "We need to discuss some discrepancies in your inventory logs," she said. I asked what discrepancies. She showed me printouts of receiving logs, my logs, that showed items marked as received that never made it to the warehouse floor. Except those weren't my original documents. Someone had altered them. "These aren't my original documents," I told her. "Someone changed them." Sandra looked skeptical. "Marcus provided these directly from the system." "Then pull my original submissions. Everything I log gets backed up automatically. The originals will show what I actually entered." She said she'd look into it, but the investigation continued, and Marcus made sure everyone knew I was the primary suspect. He didn't say it outright, he was too careful for that, but he dropped hints in meetings. He mentioned how certain employees had access that others didn't. He talked about how trust could be misplaced in people we'd known for years. My coworkers started looking at me differently. People I'd worked with for 7 years suddenly got quiet when I walked into the break room. Danny was the only one who still talked to me normally, and even he seemed uncomfortable. I started documenting everything. Every interaction with Marcus, every passive-aggressive comment, every time he singled me out in front of others. I saved emails, I took screenshots, I requested copies of my original inventory logs from IT and compared them to the ones Marcus had submitted to HR. They didn't match. The originals showed exactly what I entered: accurate counts, correct timestamps, proper documentation. The versions Marcus had given HR showed inflated numbers, items that never actually received. Someone had edited the documents to make it look like I'd logged items that didn't exist. I brought this to Sandra. I showed her the discrepancies. I explained that the documents had been tampered with. She said she'd escalate it, but nothing happened. The investigation continued, and Marcus got bolder. 2 weeks later, he called a department-wide meeting. Everyone was there, all 23 warehouse employees, plus Sandra from HR, and our regional director, Patricia Vance, who'd driven in from corporate specifically for this. Marcus stood at the front of the room with a projector displaying inventory loss charts. He talked about the $12,000 in missing merchandise. He talked about the importance of integrity. And then he looked directly at me. We've identified the source of these losses, and appropriate action will be taken. Some people think they're above accountability. They think 7 years gives them the right to steal from this company. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. Everyone knew who he was talking about. I sat there, frozen, while 22 people stared at me. Some looked shocked. Some looked disgusted. A few looked away, embarrassed on my behalf. Patricia Vance cleared her throat. "Marcus, I think we should discuss this privately." "No," he said. "Everyone needs to know. We found merchandise in her car last week. Security has it documented." That was a lie, an absolute provable lie. Security never searched my car. No one had found anything. He was making it up in front of the entire department. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "That's not true," I said. "You never searched my car. You have no evidence because I didn't take anything." Marcus smiled. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach turn. "The evidence speaks for itself. HR will be in touch about your termination."
Okay, I have to stop here for a second, because this is the moment where I almost lost it. He was lying to my face in front of everyone I worked with, and no one was stopping him. I want to know, what would you have done? Subscribe if you think I should have walked out right then and filed a lawsuit that day, or drop a comment if you think I was right to stay and fight, because what happened next, it changed everything. I didn't walk out. I didn't cry. I didn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I looked at Patricia Vance and said, "I want to see the security footage. If merchandise was found in my car, there should be video. I want to see it right now." Marcus's smile faltered. Just for a second, but I caught it. Patricia looked between us. "That's actually a reasonable request. Marcus, can you pull the footage?" "It's being processed," he said quickly. "Security is still reviewing." "The footage is stored digitally," I interrupted. "It doesn't need to be processed. It's accessible in real time from the security office. I know because I helped implement the system 3 years ago." Patricia turned to Sandra. "Can we access the security footage now?" Sandra nodded slowly. "I can call Frank in security." 20 minutes later, we were all crowded into the security office. Me, Marcus, Sandra, Patricia, and Frank, our head of security. Frank was an older guy who'd been with the company even longer than I had. He looked confused about what was happening, but started pulling up the footage Marcus had referenced. "What date was the car search?" Frank asked. Marcus hesitated. "Last Tuesday, around 3 p.m. Frank typed in the parameters. The parking lot cameras came up, showing my car clearly visible in my usual spot. We watched the footage from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Nothing happened. No one approached my car. No search was conducted. At 4:47 p.m., I walked out, got in my car, and drove away, alone, with no one stopping me. Patricia turned to Marcus. "Where's the search?" "It must be a different day. I might have the date wrong." "Pull the last 6 months," I said. "Every day. If my car was searched, it should be on camera." Frank looked at Patricia. She nodded. And over the next hour, he ran a search through the archives for any footage showing activity around my vehicle. Nothing. 6 months of footage, and not once did anyone approach my car for any kind of search or inspection. But we found something else. Frank noticed it first. "Hold on," he said, pausing on footage from 3 weeks earlier. "That's the receiving bay, after hours." The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. The warehouse was supposed to be empty, but someone was there, moving boxes from the inventory staging area to a personal vehicle parked by the side entrance. It was Marcus. We watched in silence as he loaded box after box into his SUV. Frank pulled up additional footage from other nights. It wasn't a one-time thing. He'd been doing this for months, always late at night, always through the side entrance, always careful to avoid the main cameras. Except he hadn't avoided them. He just assumed no one would ever look.
"Those are the missing monitors," I said, pointing to the screen as he loaded a distinctive box. "That shipment came in on the 14th. I logged it myself." Patricia's face had gone completely pale. Sandra was furiously taking notes. And Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. "This is a misunderstanding," he started. "I was moving those items to secure storage." "At midnight?" Patricia interrupted. "With your personal vehicle, without logging the transfer?" He didn't have an answer. The next few hours were chaos. Corporate security was called, the police were called. Marcus's SUV was searched. They found 3 boxes of medical equipment still in his trunk, items reported missing just 2 days earlier. It turned out Marcus had been stealing from the company since before he transferred to our facility. The closure of his previous location, it wasn't just budget cuts. There had been inventory losses there too, but they'd blamed it on the shutdown chaos. When he came to our warehouse, he'd continued his operation and set me up as the fall guy. The documents he'd given HR had been altered using admin credentials he'd obtained by watching over Danny's shoulder during a password reset. He'd edited my logs to show phantom inventory, then taken the actual items for himself. The $12,000 in losses? All him. Marcus was arrested that same day. He was charged with grand thefts, fraud, and falsifying business records. The company launched a full investigation into his previous facility, and they found another $40,000 in losses that had been attributed to the shutdown. But the fallout didn't stop there. Patricia Vance called me into her office 2 days later. I expected an apology. I got more than that. "We failed you," she said. "HR received your concerns about the altered documents weeks ago, and nothing was done. That's unacceptable." She offered me Marcus's position as warehouse manager with a significant raise and a formal written apology from corporate. She also told me that Sandra Chen was being reassigned, pending a review of her handling of the investigation. I asked for one more thing, a company-wide email acknowledging that I had been falsely accused and completely exonerated. Patricia agreed. That email went out the following Monday. By Tuesday, I had apologies from almost every coworker who doubted my integrity. Danny brought me coffee and admitted he felt terrible for ever questioning my integrity. Even the people who avoided me in the break room came by my desk to say they were sorry for how they treated me. I accepted the manager position. My first act was implementing a new protocol requiring dual verification for any document alterations in our system. No one would be able to tamper with records undetected again. Marcus eventually pled guilty to avoid a trial. He got 18 months in prison and was ordered to pay full restitution. I heard through the grapevine that his life left him and he lost his house paying legal fees. I'd be lying if I didn't feel a little satisfaction about that. The thing I think about most, though, is that moment in the meeting when he stood there and lied about me to everyone I worked with. He was so confident, so sure he'd gotten away with it. He thought he could destroy my reputation, steal from the company, and walk away clean. He forgot about the cameras. He forgot that the truth leaves a trail. And he definitely forgot that some of us keep receipts.
Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever been falsely accused at work, I'd love to hear about it in the comments and how you proved your innocence. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow and it means I can keep sharing stories like this one. If you have your own workplace horror story you want featured, drop it in the comments or send it to us directly. Your story might be the next one we tell. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.